Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about men. A man's ego is not just a little puffed up pride. It's his armor, it's his crown, it's the thing he wears every single day, whether he's rich, broke, young, or old. And if you want him to love you madly, you got to know how to shake that crown just a little bit. Not knock it off, but tilt it enough so he knows he can't just walk up in here and take you for granted. A man's ego is one of the most delicate yet powerful forces you will ever encounter. It's like a glass trophy, shiny, proud, and displayed for the world to see. But if you tap it in just the right spot, it shakes. A man's sense of control, his feeling of dominance, that's not just part of his personality. It's stitched into the very fabric of who he thinks he is. And when you challenge that in the right way, when you tilt that crown just a little, you wake up a side of him that will fight to keep you in his world. The thing about men is they are wired to feel like protectors, providers, the ones steering the ship. When he feels like he's in control, he's relaxed, confident, maybe even a little too comfortable. That's when he starts thinking you're a permanent fixture in his life, like you'll always be there no matter what he does. But the second you challenge that sense of control, you flip the game. You make him realize that your presence in his life is not guaranteed. That's when his attention sharpens, his energy shifts, and suddenly you're no longer the woman he thinks he's already won. You're the prize he has to keep winning over and over. Challenging a man's ego doesn't mean insulting him or tearing him down. That's not the goal. The goal is to show him through your actions that you are not under his thumb. You don't orbit around his world. You got your own universe. If he tries to control the narrative, you let him see that you have a mind of your own and you're not afraid to use it. When he suggests something and expects you to follow without question, sometimes you go in another direction. When he assumes you'll always say yes, sometimes you surprise him with a no. See, a man's ego thrives when everything is predictable, when he feels like he's always got the upper hand. So when you bring just a little unpredictability into the mix, when you break the pattern he's used to, his ego has to recalibrate. He starts paying more attention. He starts wondering what's changed. And here's the magic. When a man starts wondering, he starts working. He starts putting in effort to regain that sense of control, to prove to you and himself that he's still the man in your eyes. Now, when you challenge a man's dominance in the right way, you don't just spark his interest, you awaken his competitive nature. Men are built to compete, to fight for what they value. If you've always been the one to compromise, to bend, to make him feel like the boss, switch it up. Make decisions without asking. Stand firm on your opinions. Show him that you can hold your own ground. It's not about creating conflict. It's about creating respect. When a man sees you as strong, as someone who won't crumble under his influence, that respect starts turning into deep attraction. And here's the part that really gets him. When he realizes you're not afraid to walk away if things don't align with your standards. That's the ultimate ego check. Men know that most people, when they love someone, will put up with things just to keep the relationship. But when you're willing to hold your head high and say, I'm not settling, it rattles him. It makes him realize that loving you isn't a given. It's something he has to earn every day. So when you challenge that sense of control and dominance, you're not just hurting his ego, you're rewiring it. You're showing him that your love is a privilege, not a possession. And for a man with pride, there is no greater motivator than the fear of losing something rare and irreplaceable. That's when he starts to love you with a different kind of fire, the kind that burns because he knows he's got to keep proving he's worthy of you. A man's ego is one of the most sensitive, high maintenance parts of who he is, even though he will never admit it out loud. It's tied to his sense of control, his belief that he's the one calling the shots, steering the ship, holding the power. When he feels in charge, he's comfortable, confident, and sometimes a little too secure in thinking you'll always be right there waiting. But when you start to challenge that sense of control, you flip the whole dynamic. You make him look at you differently. Suddenly, he's not the man who has you in the palm of his hand. He's the man trying to figure out how to keep you close. The truth is, a man's ego thrives on predictability. If you've always been the one to say yes, to be available, to adjust your schedule for him, he gets used to that. He starts thinking it's just the way things are. But if you pull back, if you start making your own moves, if you remind him without even saying it that you've got your own life and your own priorities, that's when the gears in his head start turning. He begins to wonder what's going on. Why isn't she chasing me like before? And that curiosity is a powerful thing because it pushes him to step up. Pulling away doesn't mean ghosting him completely or playing childish games. It means creating space. It means showing him that his place in your world is valuable, but it's not the center of it. It's the difference between saying, I'm free whenever you are, and saying, I'm busy that day, but maybe we can work something out next week. That little shift in availability hits a man's ego harder than you think, because suddenly he's not the one controlling all the terms, you are. When you create distance, you force him to face the reality that you're not locked down. You're not sitting around waiting for his call. You've got things to do, people to see, a life to live. And the more he sees you living that life without depending on him for every ounce of your happiness, the more his pride takes a hit. That's not a bad thing. That's exactly the spark you want, because a bruised ego makes a man move. It makes him take action to win back the position he thought was secure. Now combine that with challenging his dominance, and you've got a recipe for making him love you in a way that's deep, urgent, and committed. You're telling him without saying a word that you respect him, but you're not under his thumb. You're showing him you can enjoy his presence, but also enjoy your own company. That balance, that push and pull keeps his mind engaged. Men love a challenge, and nothing challenges a man more than a woman who can stand strong on her own and still choose him. Sometimes that challenge comes in the form of disagreement. When he expects you to just go along with everything, stand your ground. When he assumes you'll drop everything for him, tell him you've already got plans. When he thinks you'll always be quick to forgive, take your time and let him work to make things right. Every one of those moments makes him see you as someone he has to earn, not someone he can simply have. Distance also makes room for him to miss you. When you're not always in his space, not always texting, not always available, he starts to remember the little things he likes about you. He starts replaying memories in his head. He starts craving the energy you bring into his life. And because his ego has been nudged, that craving turns into action. He'll start calling more, showing up more, putting in extra effort to pull you back in. That's the power of hitting a man's ego in just the right way. You're not breaking him down. You're waking him up. You're reminding him that love isn't about control, it's about value. And when he realizes that you are the kind of woman who doesn't need him but chooses him, that's when his love stops being casual and starts becoming something fierce. A man's ego is one of the most fragile things in the world, even though most men walk around acting like they made of steel. It's tied to his sense of control, his feeling that he's the one in charge, the one deciding how things go. As long as he believes he's running the show, he's comfortable, relaxed, and in his mind, untouchable. But the moment you shake that control, you flip his whole world. You take him from thinking you guaranteed to realizing you're a choice you can make or not make. And that right there lights a fire under him. See, when a man feels like he already has you, he stops chasing. He stops trying. You become part of the background, something he assumes will always be there. But when you challenge that dominance just a little, when you don't automatically follow his lead, when you make a decision that he didn't see coming, you throw him off balance. And when a man's ego is off balance, that's when he starts paying attention again. Now, the best way to make him feel that shift is to pull back a little, create space. Men might act like they don't notice when you're not as available, but believe me, they notice. When you're not instantly picking up his calls, when you're not rearranging your whole day to fit his plans, he starts to feel that space, and that space makes him ask questions. Questions like, what's she doing? Who's she with? Why isn't she chasing me like before? That curiosity is your secret weapon because it pushes him to close the gap you've created. Pulling away isn't about playing games. It's about showing him that you're not dependent on his presence to feel whole. You have your own life, your own priorities, and he's a part of it, not the center of it. And here's where it gets even more powerful. When he starts realizing that you're not just sitting around waiting for him, he'll begin to wonder if other people might be catching your attention too. That's when the competitive side of his ego kicks in. Showing a man you have options doesn't mean flirting with every person who walks by. It means living your life in a way that naturally shows you're desirable. It's about having a full schedule, new experiences, friendships, and opportunities that don't revolve around him. When he sees that other people respect you, value you, and even admire you, it hits a part of his ego he can't ignore. Suddenly, he's not just thinking about keeping you happy. He's thinking about making sure nobody else takes his spot. You don't have to say, I've got other people interested in me. You let your energy, your confidence, your independence say it for you. Maybe it's posting a picture from a night out looking amazing. Maybe it's talking about the exciting projects you're working on or the new skill you're learning. When a man sees you thriving, his ego takes a hit because he realizes you're capable of building a beautiful life without leaning on him. And that's exactly what makes him want to be a bigger part of it. The key is combining all three. Challenge his control so he doesn't get too comfortable. Create distance so he starts to miss your presence. And show him you have options so he knows you're valuable beyond just his opinion. That trifecta makes him see you as a prize he has to keep winning every single day. It makes him put in effort he thought he didn't need to give anymore. Because here's the truth. Men love the chase, and the moment they think the chase is over, their energy changes. But when you remind him through your strength, your independence, and your options that the chase never ends, he will keep loving you like he's still trying to win you for the very first time. That's when His ego works for you, not against you. A man's ego is a funny thing. On the outside, it looks tough, almost unshakable, but inside it's sensitive, tied to his belief that he's the one in control, the one who sets the tone in the relationship. As long as he feels like he's calling all the shots, he's relaxed, comfortable, and sometimes too sure that you'll always be there no matter what. But the second you challenge that sense of dominance, you make him wake up. You make him pay attention. The first step to shaking that ego is to stop making him feel like everything revolves around him. That doesn't mean you cut him off or start unnecessary drama. It means you stand firm in who you are and what you want. You make decisions for yourself. You show him that your life is full and that his place in it is earned, not given. The moment he realizes you're not just going along with everything he says, he starts seeing you differently. You're no longer a comfort zone. You're a prize he has to work to keep. Now, one of the fastest ways to make that sink in is by pulling away just a little. Men notice when you're not as available. They notice when you're not answering every call or adjusting your schedule every time they want something. That space you create plants a question in his mind. Why isn't she chasing me like before? That question is powerful because it pushes him to take action to get back that closeness he thought he had on lock. But you don't stop there. You also show him, without ever having to say it, that you have options. You're not waiting for his approval to feel valuable. You've got friends, you've got opportunities, and you've got a life that doesn't depend on him to feel complete. A man's ego is competitive by nature, and when he sees that you could be happy with or without him, it stirs something inside him. He starts to see you not just as his partner, but as someone others might want, and that's when he works even harder to secure his place in your life. And here's where the real fun comes in. You use that competitive edge to your advantage by praising qualities in others just subtly enough to get under his skin. If he prides himself on being the funniest guy in the room, let a little laugh slip at someone else's joke. If he thinks he's the most ambitious man you know, mention a story about a friend who's chasing big dreams. You're not comparing or insulting him. You're lighting a fire under his pride. Suddenly, he wants to remind you why you fell for him in the first place. The thing about men is they're wired to respond to competition. If they think they're the only option, they start to relax. But when they think there's someone out there who might do what they do or do it better, that's when their ego kicks into high gear. They start trying harder, showing up more, putting in that extra effort. You've gone from being something he assumed he had to something he's actively fighting to keep. The trick is to balance it all. You challenge his control so he respects your strength. You pull back so he feels your absence. You live like you have options so he knows your worth. And you spark that competitive fire so he keeps proving himself. When all of that comes together, you're no longer dealing with a man who's coasting. You're dealing with a man who's all in, giving you the kind of love and attention you deserve. A man's ego is like a crown he wears everywhere he goes. It's tied to his sense of control, his feeling that he's the one steering the ship. As long as he believes he's in charge, he's at ease, confident, maybe even too sure of himself. But when you challenge that control, you send a quiet but powerful message. You're not someone he can take for granted. The moment he feels that shift, he starts to look at you differently. You go from being a certainty to being a prize he needs to win every day. One way to make that message sink in is to create space. Pull back a little. Men notice when you're not as available, when you're not quick to answer every call or adjust your whole schedule for them. That space plants doubt in his mind, and doubt makes him curious. Why isn't she chasing me like before? That curiosity wakes him up, makes him take action, and suddenly he's doing things to close the gap he didn't think could exist. You also have to let him know, without ever saying it directly, that you have options. You're not sitting around waiting for his attention to feel whole. You've got your own life, your own opportunities, your own shine. When he sees that you can be just fine without him, it rattles him, not because you're threatening to leave, but because he realizes your value is bigger than his opinion. That's when his pride pushes him to secure his place in your world. Then there's the little art of sparking competition. Men are wired to compete, especially for something they value. You can use that to your advantage by subtly praising qualities in others. If he prides himself on being the funniest man you know, laugh at someone else's joke now and then. If he thinks he's the most ambitious person in your life, talk about a friend chasing big goals. You're not tearing him down. You're giving him a reason to step his game up. That little spark of competition can make him want to remind you exactly why you chose him in the first place. And here's the part most women don't realize. Your reaction to his attempts at control is everything. Some men will test you just to see if they can push your buttons. They'll make little comments, try to provoke an emotional reaction just to feel like they've got the upper hand. If you take that bait, you feed his ego in the wrong way. But if you stay calm, keep your composure, and let his words roll right off you, it shifts the power back to you. That unbothered energy is magnetic. It tells him you're not here to play small or be controlled. It makes him want to rise to your level instead of pulling you down to his. When you put all of this together, challenging his control, creating distance, showing you have options, sparking his competitive side, and refusing to give him the emotional reactions he's fishing for, you create a balance he can't ignore. You're telling him without words that you're strong, self-sufficient, and selective about who you give your love to. That's when his ego stops making him lazy and starts making him work for you. He'll chase harder, love deeper, and value you more because he knows he's not just with you by default. He's there because he earned it. A man's ego is the engine that drives a lot of his actions. It's tied to his sense of control, his belief that he's the one leading, making decisions, setting the pace. When he feels in control, he's comfortable, confident, and maybe a little too sure you'll always be there. But when you challenge that, when you make it clear that you're not someone he can just put on a shelf and pick up when he feels like it, his whole attitude shifts. You go from being something he assumes he has to something he knows he could lose. And that's when he starts working for you again. The first step is creating space. Pull back even just a little. Don't always be available. When he calls, let him wait sometimes. When he asks you to drop everything for him, don't always say yes. That space makes him think, what's going on? Why isn't she chasing me? That thought gets him curious, and curiosity is the first step toward effort. A man who's wondering is a man who's watching, and a man who's watching will start trying harder. You also have to show him that you have options, not by announcing it, but by living it. Fill your life with things that excite you. Have goals, friendships, opportunities that don't revolve around him. When he sees you happy and thriving without depending on him for every ounce of your worth, it stirs something deep in his pride. He realizes you're valuable with or without his approval, and that makes him want to be the one you choose, not the one you need. Then you feed his competitive side, just enough to make him step up. Men are wired to compete. If he thinks he's the only one who can make you laugh, let another person get a laugh out of you. If he believes he's the most ambitious man in your life, tell him a story about someone going after big dreams. You're not comparing him directly, but you're planting a seed. That seed grows into a challenge.